Welcome to Weaving Resonance, where intuition, energy, and embodiment meet real life. I'm Anna Gannon, international intuitive psychic and intuitive development coach. After conducting thousands of readings for people all over the world and training hundreds of people in developing their intuition, I'm here to help you awaken your unique intuitive gifts, trust them fully, and embody their wisdom. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Weaving Resonance podcast. Today, we are talking about something that has, quite frankly, just been on my mind the last few weeks, the last few months, and that is humanity. And I've been really trying to sense into if there was a frequency of humanity, what would it be? What is the field of humanity? And there's a few reasons why this has been on my mind. One, just everything that has been going on in the world that I just feel like goes without saying. All of you know. And the other thing is more on an individual level with seeing my mom, which I've mentioned in previous podcast. My mom has Parkinson's, and recently she got sick, ended up in the hospital, and then had to go through a whole thing with rehab, with rehabilitation of her body, of her mind, her cognition. And, you know, when you walk into any kind of care system, healthcare system, what I've come to know personally is that you will see that there are different levels of care, right? You could see that there are some people that work in healthcare that absolutely are in their purpose, right? They are there to care for other people. And then there are some people who maybe, you know, I don't know their story, but from what I've seen, maybe they got into healthcare for a reason because it felt very purposeful. Maybe some people, it's more of a job, right? They need it for more just financially, and maybe they don't feel lit up by caring for people. But you will find that when you enter those spaces that you might get really great care, and then on another level, you might get really not great care, right? So I've been thinking about this just in terms of seeing my mom, right? And oh my goodness, I totally forgot. Let's drop in, right? So usually with this podcast, we start with a little drop in. So let's take a moment. I was just talking a lot about humanity. But let's take a moment to just get into our bodies. So this is not, you know, we're not stopping to do a long meditation. This is really just a pause. So wherever you're listening from, whatever you're doing right now, take one moment to just sense yourself within your physical body. Could be helpful to kind of bring your awareness down to the bottoms of your feet and feel your awareness at the bottoms of your feet. And feel the connection between your feet and whatever is beneath you right now, or between your body and whatever you're sitting on or standing on. Good. And now that we're present in our bodies, meaning that we're not just listening from our minds, but we're listening from the whole instrument of our body. Now we can kind of open and just continue a little bit. So, like I said, humanity, been thinking about it because of what's happening with my mom, thinking about it because of what's happening in the world. And last reason I've been thinking about it is because of this Artemis spaceship, right? That just went up, the shuttle to kind of orbit the moon, with these, in my opinion, fantastic astronauts that had very inspiring things to share from their experience that I think really tie into this word humanity, right? So it's been, for me, very moving to listen to these astronauts, and especially one of them that was sharing that, you know, often all of us would be looking at the astronauts up in space, and he said that we're all looking and thinking that they're doing something really special, right? Orbiting the moon, and that they're up in space, and that's so special. And this astronaut said, and pardon me that I don't know his name, he said that when they're in that spaceship and they're looking at Earth, they are thinking, oh my goodness, look how special we are all on this planet. Because our whole planet is just surrounded by darkness. And here, his words, he called it a sanctuary, that Mother Earth is a sanctuary. And that often we forget that we've been gifted this sanctuary in the midst of darkness, right? And we have to remember how special we are. And ever since I heard him say that, I've been actually looking up at the sky, which I often do, and think, just beyond the sky, there's darkness, right? And that's what we are held by. That darkness outside of the planet is holding us, giving us a hug, and allowing Mother Earth to exist, this sanctuary to exist, that we have the absolute gift to live on. So with that, I've been thinking about different things that I have learned throughout my life that kind of symbolize humanity, right? And I wanted to share 3 things with you today, 3 different ideas that represent humanity, and then also weave in some personal stories. So the first one is one of my favorites, and it was something that I heard Margaret Mead say, and she was an anthropologist, and she said that the first sign that we have ever found in history of civilization, of humanity, is when they found a femur bone that had been healed. And the reason why this was a sign of civilization, of humanity, is because in order for a femur bone to heal way back in time, it meant that someone had to have stayed alongside someone else whose femur bone was broken. Meaning that it was a sign that someone stayed to protect that person while they healed, meaning that they cared about them so much that they stayed there to protect them and to care for them. So when we think about humanity, we really are talking about caring. We're talking about protection. We're talking about looking and noticing when someone might need help and taking care of them, right? And this is something that I think I was definitely brought up by my parents, to always look for ways that you can help. Whether this is, if you're at the grocery store and you see someone, they just offloaded their cart, and maybe they're an elderly person, or, a parent that has a lot of kids around, whatever it is. Maybe it's just a regular person and, you want to just help them and they don't have an extra task that you feel like they need help. But my parents would always teach us to kind of offer to take the cart back up for them, right? Or offer to help maybe someone in the grocery store. Maybe they're a little bit shorter and they want to get something up high and you notice it, you offer to help. So there was always this instilled awareness in me and my siblings to look for areas that you can help, right? To kind of be that in the world. And I was actually thinking about this the other month when I was driving to my mom's. I go to my mom's every Thursday to tuck her in, to feed her, and to help her get to bed. And when I was driving on a highway that was like a 4-lane highway, a very busy highway in Philadelphia. And I saw that in one of the middle lanes, there's this car that had their flashers on and they were driving very slow. And I noticed that the driver was an elderly person. And it broke my heart in that moment because I knew the only thing I could do, because there was no shoulders on the road, there was no way for this car to pull over, nor for I to pull over. So I knew in that moment that I just had to keep driving. I just had to drive by this person, right? And I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling of not being able to stop and help. It's the same thing when I lived in New York City, right? I did not like to just pass by people that were homeless or that might need help. So I did my best when I could to offer help or to offer connection or to even look them in the eye. I once heard in a documentary, I do not remember what it was called, but it was a documentary that was interviewing homeless people. And I remember that one of the things that they said that is actually the hardest thing and the most heartbreaking thing is that when you're homeless, people stop making eye contact with you. And what they described is when people stop making eye contact with you, you start to feel invisible. You start to almost question your reality. You question if you even exist because people aren't acknowledging you. And I think that this is a big thing in our society, just in general, across the board with our devices and our smartphones. We are losing eye connection. We are losing acknowledgement. So just notice that for a moment and maybe sense if there's ways where you can use just eye contact. Eye contact, a soft smile, and acknowledgement of another human without needing to do anything other than that. Just to look and meet that soft, welcoming gaze of, I see you, you exist, right? How much of us just need that right now? I'm getting emotional just saying it, and maybe I'm tuning into the people that are listening today, but I think it's a big thing in our culture right now that a lot of us aren't feeling seen and acknowledged, and we can offer it just with a simple eye contact, a simple gaze of acknowledgement, right? So the next thing that I wanted to share about humanity, number 2, is that there is this saying in Southern Africa of Ubuntu, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that right, Ubuntu. And what Ubuntu means is that I am because we are. So in Southern Africa, this is a known saying, Ubuntu. I am because we are. And there's a well-known story of these children, I believe it was children, who were set to have a race, right? And whoever won the race would win. And instead, when these kids took off to run this race, again, I believe it was children, they took off, and because of Ubuntu, none of them crossed the finish line until all of them connected hands and they crossed together. They knew in their own bones, in their culture, that no one wins unless they all win. And it's such a simple thing of just opening our awareness, opening our sense of Ubuntu, to sense who else is here and how can I help and how can I support and how can we move forward together? We are stronger together, right? We always hear this. And, you know, when I heard about this story, it made me think about a story in my own life. So there was a point in time when I was studying to be a physical education teacher, right? To be a gym teacher in schools. And I was living in Astoria, Queens, New York City at the time, and I was going to Queens University. And I studied there for 3 years. I did not end up continuing, and there's a whole story there. But when you are studying to be a physical education teacher, you have to go through all the different sports and you have to pass them. You have to get a certain grade level, right? So grade level for, baseball, for swimming, for badminton, all the things, basketball, right? And you get scored. And one of the scores was running. And when I was in Queens University, I was in my later 20s. I believe I was like 26, 27. So I was in class with a lot of younger kids, right? Kids that had just graduated high school and went straight into college. And that wasn't me. I was a little bit older. And because of that, I had already kind of had, I believe, a healthy relationship with my body. So I exercised. I was a runner at that time. And we had to take this test where we had to finish a whole mile. I believe it was a mile. Maybe it was longer, but I think it was 1 mile running around a track 4 times. And we had to do it under a certain amount of time. Maybe it was like 10 minutes or something like that. And I remember all the kids in my class were super scared of this test because they weren't runners. Maybe they were sprinters, but not long distance, right? And I just remember it wasn't a big deal for me. And on the day of the run, right, everyone was so scared. And I remember even kind of talking to some of the kids, like, it's going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. And, we shot off and did the race, and it wasn't a race, but we just all had to finish in a certain amount of time. And I was one of the first people, if not the first person to finish. And I remember when I finished, like after that, all the kids, as they were running around, as I call them kids, because they were just younger than me, they would like, once they finished, they would like collapse on the grass, right? And just be like panting. And, you know, it was like this very entertaining moment, even for the teacher, because it's a little stressful, right? And there was this one woman that was in my class, and she was older than me. I want to say she was probably in her late 30s at the time. And she was studying to be a physical education teacher as well. She had children, and she was a single mom. And I saw her running, and she was one of the last, if not the last. And there's me on the grass finished, and a bunch of other kids around me finished. They're all panting, right? Most of them were men, boys. And the teacher was, you know, kind of encouraged us like, hey, you know, like, listen, one of your teammates is still out there, this woman, and she was really struggling with running. And she said, you know, cheer her on. And I remember just from being in sports as a little girl, I've always known the impact, the energy of cheering someone on. There's a huge energy shift when we root someone on, truly. Whether we are rooting them on individually, celebrating someone, being proud of someone, right? Or if we're doing it in a more collective team way to root someone on. But when I was watching her run, I knew it wasn't enough. And I also knew that just from watching her, I'm like, she needs someone. And so without saying anything, I just got up and I ran to her as she was running on the track, and I ran next to her. And she was really struggling. She was, you know, practically walking, but with a little bit of a hop because she knew she had to keep going. And I said, hey, listen, I forget her name. I said, I'm going to run next to you. I'm going to finish this with you. And I'm going to talk to you the whole time so that I can distract you, right, from what you're doing. Because I don't know if any of you have ever ran for a long distance, but it's very challenging when all you're focusing on is the next step, right? So I talked to her the whole time. I think we had to do 2 more laps. She had to do 2 more laps left. And I literally walked and ran with her to the finish line. And I don't know if she would have finished if that didn't happen. I don't know if she would have finished if I didn't go out there, if she didn't have support. And I think about that so often because that's who I want to be in the world. I don't want to be the person that's collapsed on the grass. I want to, if there's something in me that can give, I want to give. I want to get up and I want to help as much as I can. And sometimes you will be the person on the grass who needs help, who needs someone to bring them water, right? But I wasn't in that moment. I had something to give. And I think it's important to look at just, if we have something to give, can we give it? If we have that extra moment, you know, in the parking lot and we see someone with a cart and maybe they don't have an extra moment, can we put that cart away from them? Away for them, right? So just looking at these ways, and this really is a field of energy. It's an awareness. It's a filter in which we look through. We either look through the filter of individual, of what do I need, right? And I need to get in my life and this and that. Or we hold both. We take care of ourselves, understand that there is a filter in which we do need to care for ourselves. But then when we can, we expand that awareness to see, if I have extra energy, how can I give today? How can I help? Little things, very little things. Someone drops something and you pick it up, right? Ubuntu. I am because we are. The last one has to do with elephants and elephant herds and what's been studied about them. So one of the things is that elephants will always pick up if there's a weak elephant, the elephants will come and help to lift the weak elephant up and help them walk, right? So going back to that Margaret Mead, how she found the first sign of civilization was a healed femur. Elephants automatically show humanity. By not leaving anyone behind, they help the other elephants to pick them up so that they can walk, right? Also, they will stay with injured members. So again, going back to that femur, they will stay with those that are injured. They will not leave them alone. And lastly, elephants will go back to the sites where other elephants have passed and the bones lay. They will go back to visit those bones. And I think that kind of bridges that connection of What are we doing right now to help? How do we tap into that field of awareness that is that is caring for the people that are here, but also tap into that awareness, that connection, that we of the people that have even passed over, right? And remembering that we have that connection, that we can also use that energy and send our energy out that way. So, you know, I've kind of been thinking about that idea of how are we creating our world, and are we creating it in a world that it is not just about I, but we? And I even saw this when I was in Greece last. So I go to Greece a lot. My husband's Greek and his family lives there. And when we were walking around Athens, just my husband and I, it was like semi impossible to walk around Athens on the sidewalk. The sidewalks are either really narrow or there'd just be like a tree right in the center of the sidewalk. And fine for us, fine for my husband and I, because we're mobile and, we can easily adjust. But I think now, because of my mom, I think through that lens of someone with a walker or someone with a wheelchair. How have we created or not created this world to support what other people need too? And unfortunately, this just so happens to be something that we don't think about until it's really close to home. That's what I see. We think about this once we know someone who needs that or we've experienced it ourselves, right? But I believe there's an opportunity right now, especially in how we're evolving and what we're doing with AI and what we're building across the board, not just with technology, but how are we thinking beyond? How are we thinking about each other beyond? And what we're talking about today is really something that we can all do at any moment. It's just to tap into that fabric of we and look for those little moments where we can help. And that's kind of what I want to leave you with today. To look through that filter, tap into that field, notice when you can help, but then also notice when someone else helps you, whether it's in person or maybe something you just notice. What I mean by that is I remember I was hiking with my kids last summer and there was like a really muddy spot on the trail and someone had laid out a long flat board so that anyone could cross, not just them, right? They left it behind so that anyone that needed to cross that path again, they left it there so that they could all walk through. And I remember when I saw that, I said, I love people. Man, people are good. So look for the good. Look for where people are doing good, where they're leaving stuff behind or they're doing stuff in the moment. Be that, but also acknowledge when you see it, right? Last thing I'll leave you with is that I can't wait to see this mother that I saw at the playground. There's a playground very close to my house. And I saw this mother playing with her young son there. And then maybe 20 minutes later, I left to go for a run. The mom had already left with her child. And I just so happened to run by the mom at her house. And she was still outside playing with her son. He was in a little car and she was pushing him up a hill. And I just thought, wow, she's a good mom. And I can't wait to see her again and tell her that I saw that and just say, you're a good mom. So please, please, please take this and see how you can pass it on. And I would love if you're watching this on YouTube, maybe comment under the video ways that you have found that good coming towards you, ways that you have cared and helped others, right? And let's just start a little chain of connection there, right? And if you're listening on the podcast, you can always email me, find me on Instagram at Ann Again. And here, I would just love to hear how you apply this. Before we hop off, take a moment, make sure you're still in your body. Make sure you're feeling really connected to your body, to the surface beneath your body, to this beautiful air that is around your body and coming into your body with each breath in and breath out. And I am just so grateful to be able to sit here with you today. And I hope you all have a beautiful week. And I will see you soon. Thank you so much for listening today. If this episode supported you, please subscribe and leave a rating. That simple step helps this podcast grow and helps more people reconnect with their intuition in a grounded, embodied way. If you want to go deeper, take my 5-minute free quiz in the show notes entitled Unlock the Full Power of Your Intuition, where you'll discover your unique intuitive gifts, whether you're a knower, seer, feeler, or sensor, and learn more about how your intuition naturally speaks to you. Look out for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. I'm so honored to have spent this time with you. See you next week.